Are the Golden State Warriors deciding to stand pat after the Jimmy Butler injury? We'll talk a little bit about that and how Jonathan Kuminga responded after a month away from basketball. Also, the Washington Wizards are going asset hunting, and we're going to look at an article that picked the best landing spots for the top 10 players on the trade block. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
Well, what's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for all real talk around the NBA and basketball. No fluff, no narratives, just hoops. I'm your host there, Haize. But more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. I want to start off talking about this one, right? So the Golden State Warriors do not expect to shop Jimmy Butler and do expect him back next season. Now, I shouldn't even have to say this. This is one of the dumbest things that I've seen go around social media in a while. Like, people like, oh my God, the Warriors could possibly dump off Jimmy Butler's contract and sell him for low because of the ACL injury. He's going to be 37 years old, returning back from an ACL injury with a huge contract. What team do you think is going to take that? What team do you think is going to take that? Unfortunately, there aren't many teams that are going to take that. Unfortunately for the Golden State Warriors, so it is what it is, man, and that's something that we already expected. Mike Dunleavy Jr. said this. I don't envision that. But now that you brought it up, I guess I say what I envision for him is kind of give us a boost next year, the same way he did last year when he arrived. And so at some point during next season, he'll be returning. There's no doubt about that. Like, there's just no doubt about that right now. For what it's worth, there is some reason why this narrative does exist. D'Anthony Melton last season tore his ACL, and the Warriors turned around and trade him in the trade that brought in Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder was then later flipped in the deal that brought Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors. So I guess there is some precedence for, ACL injuries and the Golden State Warriors trying to flip players, whatever. But there's a huge difference. D'Anthony Melton was on a one-year deal at that time, and it was understood that he would probably return to the Golden State Warriors in free agency, which he eventually did anyway. Jimmy Butler is owed $54 million next season, which is fully guaranteed. Fully guaranteed. So, Jimmy Butler's going to be back. That's kind of what the Golden State Warriors have to do. That's why yesterday I talked about it. Like, the Warriors making the move for Jimmy Butler was their all-in move on trying to improve the team and make it a title contender. And it is what it is. But for what it's worth yesterday as well, Jonathan Kaminga, after being away from the team for more than a month, returned and scored 20 points in his return with 5 rebounds, 2 assists in 21 minutes. But they did lose 145 to 127. But hey, the thing about it is that Jonathan Kuminga has not played since playing only 10 minutes December 18th when they defeated the Phoenix Suns. So this is Jonathan Kuminga returning back. Of course, there's so much talk about what's going to happen with him, them moving him, stuff like that. And Mike Dunleavy Jr. talked about that as well. He said this: as far as the demand, I'm aware of that. In terms of demands, when there is a demand, there needs to be a demand on the market. So we'll see how that unfolds. I love Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s comments here. In terms of the demand, when there's a demand, there has to be a demand on the market. And, there's been some questions on exactly how much there is a demand, how much teams really are interested in Jonathan Kuminga and his value out there. But this does offer a unique opportunity, much like last night, for Jonathan Kuminga to prove what he can do and to increase the trade value a little. And if that happens for the Golden State Warriors, who, could be looking to make a trade with him, or probably will be looking to make a trade with Jonathan Kuminga, if the value's there, great. And we'll see what's going to happen with that one, man. So overall, it was good to see Jonathan Kuminga get back out there. It's good to see him perform in the manner in which he did as well, shooting 70% from the field, 33% from three. He only took 3 3-pointers. But to have him increase, he had to still in that game as well. For him to have that type of game in his return after being gone that long, maybe can remind some teams, because I do think Jonathan Kuminga is a very talented player. I do think that there is a really good NBA player in Jonathan Kuminga. I have no doubts about that. I do think the situation that he's in, he has to be able to play his game. He has to be able to be ball dominant. He has to be able to do some of those things. And, we'll see if he can do that. But this is a guy that has shown flashes of greatness before. Like, we've seen Jonathan Kuminga and how good he can look in some games, even when he doesn't necessarily get a lot of minutes. And, of course, any team that wants to buy in on him, has to look at that as well. So, overall, we'll see what happens with Jonathan Kuminga. We'll see what happens with the Golden State Warriors. But just kind of crush some narratives. No, the Warriors are not going to be trading Jimmy Butler. There's probably not a demand out there. And at that point, it just becomes about what we already knew the focus was going to be in this season for the Golden State Warriors. Go ahead and try to trade Jonathan Kuminga, get what you can get, see if you can get something that can help you in your run now and where your team is now, and then figure out the rest later. And, we'll see what happens with Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors with that. But from a team that's looking to move an asset to another team in the Washington Wizards that could be looking to acquire assets. So this one comes from The Athletic, which says that the Warriors right now, their plan is, despite, even with trading for Trae Young, is that they are willing to take on bad contracts for draft picks leading into the trade deadline. And that's what it seems right now. It seems like right now the Washington Wizards are more than happy to be a dumping ground if it means it gets them picks back. And that's really where the Washington Wizards should be at. They've accumulated a nice young core. I like that, right? But when you look at what we've seen from them as well, like team president there, Michael Winger, and the general manager, Will Dawkins, listen, they've done this before. Look at the players that they've acquired in the last few years. Chris Middleton, right? Acquired him, $33.3 million salary. Malachi Branham, $5 million salary. Morgan Bagley, $2.3 million contract. And so we'll see what happens there. But when you look at, getting undesirable long-term contracts back for draft picks, the potential's there for the Bulls. Jeremy Grant with the Portland Trailblazers, Emmanuel quickly with the Toronto Raptors. There are going to be players that teams are looking to dump, and if they can get a pick back to do that, especially with the second tax apron, the Washington Wizards have put them in a prime position to be able to do those things, and it's smart, right? Again, I'm not somebody who I like tanking. I don't like tanking when teams do it outright, when they actually have talent on the roster. But this is a Washington Wizards team that is competitive in some games for sure, right? You have a nice young core that you're building here. I think Alexander Sarr, Trey Johnson, Coulibaly, these are some guys that really do have some really good futures ahead of them. Bub Carrington, of course, I can't forget talking about Bub Carrington. But at the same time, when you look at their salary cap situation, they are $108 million beneath the first tax apron projected this next season. They're already $34 million below it this season. So the Washington Wizards have put them in a prime position where they can take bad contracts on veterans back, stack even more draft picks to get that done, and still naturally develop their young players while they're doing that. And who knows? Maybe Trae Young even eventually has more of a value to where they can flip him for more assets as well if a team needs a point guard later in the offseason or anything like that. So I love the way that the Washington Wizards have attacked their rebuild. I think they've done it about as good of a job as you can. I think they've drafted the right players. They got some talent players down there as well. And so I really think that they set themselves up really nicely to be that guy. You look at, they were able to get Trae Young because they had CJ McCollum's contract, right? They were able to do that for that. So, it's the fact that stacking assets, that is the clearest path to be able to get yourself out of. Give yourself the most bites at the apple possible to try to improve your team as you can. And that's what the Washington Wizards are doing right now. They are willing to take on bad contracts. But when you look at they have their young building blocks that they are trying to develop. Alexander Sarr, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, Coulibaly, Bub Carrington. They have these players. Could they be a team that takes a shot at Jonathan Kaminga? Maybe. I don't know if they have anything that the Golden State Warriors would necessarily be interested in, but they've put themselves in that position, and that's really all your job is as a front office, is to put yourself in a position and then take advantage of that position by drafting well, developing well, doing those type of things. And for what it's worth, they've done that, right? They have 2 first-round picks going in this year, potentially, as long as their own pick falls between 1 and 9. They keep their pick. They'll have the OKC Thunder pick as well. Then they have the Portland Trailblazers pick in 2029 and their own pick in 2029, a potential another Golden State Warriors pick in 2031 with their own pick as well. And so why not stack and add more assets to that where and when you can? That's the job of the front office. So we'll see if they're able to attack that in the manner in which they need to. But the Washington Wizards have set themselves up, I think, in a prime position to do some things that matter and really try to take advantage of the young core that they have here. But with that said, I want to get into the last topic of today's episode. Now, this comes from an article from Clutch Points in which they try to predict the best landing spots for each of the top 10 names that are on the trade market, rumored to be on the trade market, leading into this trade deadline. And we're going to go through them one by one and see how we feel. So for Ja Morant, they had the best landing spot is the Miami Heat. I've talked about that before too. I would love to see Ja Morant go to a coach like Eric Spoelstra. I think Spo is the type of coach that can get Ja Morant to focus back in on basketball, allow him to be himself, those type of things. But it seems like Miami Heat are also waiting. They do not want to put themselves in a position where they may have to miss out on Giannis Antetokounmpo if he becomes available. So therefore, I don't know if that's going to happen, right? That's the thing that's preventing the Miami Heat from making. I truly think if the Miami Heat wanted to make a move for Ja, they could do so right now. They could do so at the trade deadline. The question then becomes about, are they willing to go all in on that, to do that now, even if it means that they could have to miss out on Giannis later, right? Or do they feel like they can make a trade and keep enough assets to maybe make a run at Giannis later down the road? Next up, Jonathan Kuminga with the Golden State Warriors. They have the best landing spot for him in the Sacramento Kings. This is another one that I actually do agree with. I think that the Kings have players that can help the Golden State Warriors now. We talked about DeMar DeRozan potentially going to the Golden State Warriors yesterday. I think he's a veteran that fits their timeline, that window that they have with the Jimmy contracts, the Dre contracts, and Steph Curry contracts. I think that makes sense. The question just becomes about, is that what they want to do? Is that what the Golden State Warriors do? They look at DeMar DeRozan as being the type of player that they can actually help them make a run this season, and that's where the biggest questions lies for that. But I think that Jonathan Kuminga and the Sacramento Kings, the Kings were probably the only team, or the team that showed the most interest this offseason as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they revisit those talks leading into the February 5th trade deadline. Next up, Michael Porter Jr. And for him, they have the Detroit Pistons. Listen, the Detroit Pistons have built such a good team, and they've done so with such a good defense. I don't know if adding Michael Porter Jr., even with the season that he's having, what that does to the Detroit Pistons defense. Their defense has been absolutely spectacular. Their offense hasn't been too shabby either. Now, we have heard that they are looking maybe to move on from Jaden Ivey and cash in and try to get some other contracts that they can. He's having a great season, 25.8 points per game. He's doing the thing. He's contributed to a championship team before with the Denver Nuggets. And so with the Detroit Pistons, one of their biggest weaknesses is three-point shooting. So Michael Porter Jr. would help them do that. I just don't know if do they really, is Michael Porter Jr. The difference between them and getting into the NBA Finals? If they view that is, then maybe they make that move. But, we'll see what happens there. Next up, Anthony Davis. They have the Atlanta Hawks. Now, this has been a team that's been rumored in being interested in Anthony Davis before. I don't think it's going to happen. I think when you look at that young core that they built, why add a very injury-prone player? You already had Kristaps Porzingis there. I don't know why you would want to do that again. But, I don't know what team fits Anthony Davis. I just don't know because of the size of the contract, the injury concerns. If he was 100% healthy and you can guarantee that, he can fit on just about any team in the NBA. But the thing that you can't ignore with Anthony Davis is the injury history. You can't. It's been such a large part of his career. You just can't ignore it, and therefore, I really don't know. If I'm a team, I'm waiting to see if he doesn't get an extension, and I'll make a run at him in free agency rather than trade for that sizable contract. $60 million almost for less than 60 games a season doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that one down below. For Zion Williamson, they have the Chicago Bulls. Now, you guys know I'm clearly a Bulls fan. And when the rumors were that you could get Zion maybe for expirings and matching salary, it made some sense for the Bulls to do that. I think Jake Fisher recently said something like, maybe you can get it done with 3 seconds and a young player. And, I'm not necessarily mad at that if that ends up being the case, right? Especially the Chicago Bulls, they have been a team that has lacked a star-level caliber player forever. And do I think they would be thirsty enough to go? Maybe, right? They have the expiring contracts, $89 million in expiring contracts for the Chicago Bulls. And you look at what he does, like him catching lobs from Josh Giddey, getting out and running in transition. I mean, listen, he's still averaging 22.4 points per game. He could be a top scoring option for you. And we've seen the plus minus when he's on the court for the Pelicans. So there's definitely some thought process there that it could work out. But the Bulls are such a risk adverse team. And I just don't know if they would make that trade. But on the basketball court, can completely see it happening. They even mentioned Chris Paul on here, which I keep forgetting that they sent him home and he has not had a resolution yet. I think teams are probably going to wait him out to just be bought out. I don't think teams are going to trade for Chris Paul, but they do have the Houston Rockets listed here. And I will say that actually makes sense. And I think it's going to happen as a buyout, though. I think they'll eventually buy out Chris Paul. If they do that, I think that Chris Paul going to the Houston Rockets to help them facilitate a little bit actually makes some sense for him. I wouldn't hate that at all. I actually think this makes a lot of sense, and it's not a long-term risky option for the Houston Rockets either, who reportedly don't want to add a lot of long-term money. Next up, Tyus Jones for the Orlando Magic. Now, this is a player that I think he's been pretty good for the Orlando Magic, right? I think he has one of the best assist-to-turnover ratios in the NBA. He's developed a decent three-point shot, right? Whereas his brother, Trey Jones, is still kind of inconsistent with that one. But when you look at it, at the end of the day, he's averaging 3.2 points per game, shooting 34.8% from the field, and he is not produced in the way that the Orlando Magic wanted him to produce. So if they do look to move him, it makes some sense. They have the Los Angeles Clippers as a team that makes some sense for him. I guess I could see the Clippers taking a shot at it. The Clippers are trying to find something that stick to the wall. The Clippers have been winning games lately. They did lose to my Chicago Bulls yesterday, but they definitely are a team that's still winning some games. So that makes some sense. Next up, Kobe White. They have for Kobe White from the Chicago Bulls, Minnesota Timberwolves. It almost makes too much sense. Mike Conley is bad now. At 38 years old, he's struggling. Rob Dillingham has not really developed to anything for that team yet meaningfully. And so if they are truly looking to acquire a point guard, Kobe White makes a lot of sense. Now, we have heard that they don't want to add long-term money, and that's where it may not make sense for them. I think maybe like a Trey Jones on the Chicago Bulls, maybe even an Ayo Dosunmu makes a little bit more sense for them. But as, Kobe White has been a player that has flirted with being most improved, in the league and stuff like that before, it makes some sense. And Kobe White next to Anthony Edwards, sign me up for that one. Next up, Herb Jones. They have the Lakers. I'm moving on from this one because it's been reported that they're not looking to move. We know that the Lakers are very interested in Herb Jones, but the Pelicans may be looking to hold on to their core, which I still think makes sense for them as well. And I don't think that's a bad case at all. DeMar DeRozan with the Kings. They have the Philadelphia 76ers listed as that. I'll go the Golden State Warriors with that one. But I think at this point, DeMar DeRozan just wants to be in a place where he can compete and win a title. And maybe that is the Philadelphia 76ers with how they're playing this year. Tyrese Maxey is a legit MVP candidate with how the numbers that he's putting up this year. He's not going to win it, but I did say candidate. Don't be surprised if he's top 3 to 4 in voting this year. But DeMar DeRozan is such an interesting player because you have to commit to playing a certain style with DeMar DeRozan. And if you do that, he can be very successful in that style, but you have to commit to that style. And that's where maybe the Philadelphia 76ers don't make the most sense at, but we shall see. But let me know what you guys think down below, man. That's going to do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well, and drop your takes in the comments down below. Where do you think these players are going to end up? Let me know that down below. You guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything basketball related, and I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making an episode. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.